going on, everyone? Welcome back to the podcast Corner Talks. I have my good friend here, Adrian Leva, real estate investor from New Mission Investments. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm great, buddy. Just
Thanks for
enjoying.
having me.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for joining. How's everything going on? I know these are crazy times. I'm always curious what my friends are doing, what they're up to. How are you coping?
Yeah, no, I'm surprisingly I'm doing well. We'll get into the nitty gritty, but I just want to say I think your podcast is serving a lot of people. I think it's serving listeners well because I think this whole pandemic, it's made people feel like they're in a black box. They're dealing with their own problems, and they think they're the only ones dealing with them. But really, we're all going through similar things, and I think podcasts like yours are giving context to a lot of your listeners that everybody's kind of going through the same thing, and generating that like sense of camaraderie that we're all in this together. I think is super important. Even at a really local level, like between you and I, like our lives, just two
Of course.
people,
Yeah.
giving that context, I think is going to be helpful for a lot of folks, because everybody feels like, at least from my perspective, I feel like a lot of people have thought, oh, I'm falling behind, and I see all these people doing great
Hmm.
things.
Yeah.
Um, at least I've gotten some messages from people, and they're saying, you're doing great as a real estate investor. Yeah, I definitely am super grateful for the path I've been
Right.
on, but I've obviously dealt with challenges as well, and I think giving light to those things, especially to people who think that you or I may be ahead of them,
Hmm.
is really helpful, right? Because we're all going through this together. So,
Of course.
anyways,
Yeah, no, I want to just touch on what you said because I'm glad you mentioned it is the important thing and why I create content or why you might create content down the road with regards to connecting to your audience is you want to show that vulnerability. You want to show that side where you're just as human as they are. And I always connect it back to, what's a good movie, right? A good movie is where the person you can relate to, you're inspired by, and you can connect on a different level, a human level, right? If everything's portrayed as so perfect as we see with our generation, especially with the highlight reel, as I call it, you lack that grit, you lack that feeling, right, towards them. But
100%.
so with these podcasts, with these vlogs, yeah, that's the intention, guys, is to show you that we're just like you, and we got our own. Me and you, we always were texting when we were keeping up with each other's lives, like what the pitfalls we were going through or the obstacles, but what we overcame them, and there's going to be even more to come. Right? There's always going to be things that we're going to experience that we're going to share with you guys. Hopefully, you'll take it and be inspired by. So on that note, big obstacle that we can all agree on, to Adrian and people listening, is the pandemic. When it hit, to give you guys some context, Adrian and I were collaborating. I run a production company called 94 Productions, and he runs New Mission Investments, and we were on the same path with regards to creating our own business and starting our own kind of creative venture. And we really didn't know where it was headed. We just knew what we wanted to do, and needed to take the initial steps. So upon saying that, when I was creating content with you, I remember, we had a great session and you dropped me off at my house. I remember you saying, like, I had a great time. Can't wait. We're going to kill it. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to make more content. Can't wait, whatever. And then a week later, the pandemic hit and everything just stopped, as far as it did for me. Like, my world just stopped.
Yeah.
Because again, with creativity, it requires a little bit more than staying in your room. You got to get out there, and got to have a team. And yeah, I'll get into that later. But I'm just curious with you, whatever happened, like how did you cope with that initial change when the world was
Yeah.
like borders are closed, stay home?
Yeah, man, it was so funny, the timing of it all. Like, for everybody listening, like, Daniel and I would meet at the gym. Well, we would kind of cross paths at the gym. We didn't really set it up, but we'd always
Right.
be at the gym at the same time, same place. And we'd have these like really inspiring, like motivating conversations, because we're really on the same wavelength, right? Of like
Yeah.
wanting to start businesses, and improving and progressing, whatever. And that kind of led to us collaborating, and we were just so pumped. We were so excited. It was like last February, beginning of March.
Hmm.
And then literally we were at the house at my the property I have as a project, had this great day. Recorded this sweet intro and like walkthrough videos.
Mhm.
Literally next thing, boom, shut down, done. Oh man, crazy. Anyways, yeah. So from the real estate angle, from kind of where I was and where I wanted to go last year, I was super pumped. I had this whole plan in my head of being able to take a step back from the nitty gritty, um, technical side of the renovations. I had a contractor, or I should say, a general contractor that was set up. So they're the ones that manage the teams and actually manage the renovation. I was going to be able to be more of a business owner and work on the business rather than in the business.
Right.
And it was super exciting because I was ready to build my brand. I was ready to expand my business, start raising capital. So basically, for context, basically what I was trying to do was start a real estate investing business where I was buying undervalued properties, renovating them, renting them out, and then refinancing at the new appraised value of the building, and then recycle my capital into another project. And then at the same time, oh my gosh,
Busy guy.
that's my plumber.
You're a busy
Anyways,
guy. Busy guy.
and then eventually raise capital
Right.
from from joint ventures to scale my business. That was this high level plan. I was super excited,
Yes.
but that obviously didn't happen the way I planned it to be, and that's
Right.
okay. So when the world shut down, I didn't have my permit from
Mm.
the city of Hamilton at the time, and what that basically means is I cannot legally hire people to work in the building. Um, Basically, the lockdown prevented new projects or projects without permits yet to not start. Like, you can't start construction.
Right.
They will not issue the permits. So I had
Wow.
2 months of
Yeah.
time where I couldn't hire
Do
anybody.
anything.
And so
Wow.
what I ended up having to do was go into that house myself with my 58-year-old father and demolish that house
Yeah.
by myself.
Wow.
So that was a whole experience in itself, man. Like, I
And you
had to
didn't even
gut
hire
this building.
workers. I remember you telling me,
Oh,
right?
sorry, I can't hear you. Can you hear
Hello?
me?
Can you hear me?
Okay, there we go.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I'm
I
saying I
think
was just gonna interject. I was gonna. Yeah. We've been having a lot of hiccups this morning. I was gonna interject. You didn't even hire anyone to help you with removing the debris, and like take us through that. Like what was that experience like?
Yeah, that was not in the plan whatsoever. So I
Yeah.
was going to hire a demolition team to fully gut this house back to the bricks. It was a 110-year-old house, had plaster and metal lath on the walls. Like, this was the old way construction used to work.
Right.
And my 50-year-old father and I went in this place, and because we couldn't hire anybody, we had to do it ourselves. Rip this thing back to the studs, put all the garbage. I think it was probably more than 15,000 pounds worth of material in garbage bags placed in the backyard because we couldn't get a bin, we didn't have a driveway, and
Yeah.
then had to haul it to the dump ourselves. That probably took us, I don't even know, a number of months to do, just chipping away, chipping away. I'm so grateful that my dad was able to help. And this guy has a full-time job. He runs a freaking construction
Yeah.
division,
Yeah.
and he was still willing to come and help me. We were
Hmm.
joint venturing on the deal together, so I'm really grateful he helped me out. But that wasn't in the plan at all, man.
No, for sure. No, yeah. I know
But we
that
did
your
save
dad. Well,
a
what's
couple
up?
bucks.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, I remember those times when I came. That one time I did come up to help you shoot that thing. He showed up and you're explaining to me that like he's been helping out a lot. He's like a partner basically in the investment, and you guys were
Yeah,
helping each other, and a lot of great experiences, a lot of funny moments. I remember, um, just kind of you pulling stuff out of the drywall, and because you were explaining it was 100-year-old house, right, or over 100 years old, like the way it was designed and how like it was deteriorating. Like, what kind of stuff did you pull out of the drywall? You were mentioning like
yeah.
things that you can pawn, things that are worth a few million or no?
Oh, I wish. No gold bars just yet, but
No
it
gold
was
bars?
super funny. No gold bars just yet, but I found some like old Lay's chips bags behind the walls.
Like the way they were
Construction
printed.
laborers.
Yeah, yeah, of course. That's
They don't
crazy,
give a
man.
shit.
Yeah,
They
they
don't
don't.
throw
Yeah,
anything in garbage bags.
yeah.
They just shove it in holes and they cover it up. This still happens today. But found that I found a vinegar bottle from, I think it was 1950s, or earlier than that. I kept that. I found a couple collector's cards of old vintage cars.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
yeah, it was really interesting. I found all sorts of things. I don't know what they're worth, but I'm keeping them for sentimental value at least.
Yeah, why not? You know?
You know, it's my first property, it's my first experience in real estate, so I think they're going to mean something to me in
Hmm.
5 years when, you know, the
You look
business is
back.
much bigger than it is.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. I like
yeah.
the idea of the bottle. The bottle's pretty cool to keep.
The bottle is cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was manufactured in Toronto back in 1950s, and I forget the name of the company,
Hmm.
but it looked like the Heinz brand
Mm.
almost, which was interesting.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
but anyways, I'm curious for you because at least my experience, there was hiccups in the beginning.
Yeah.
Things still went as planned and later on, which we can discuss. But obviously, on your end, as a director and a producer,
Right.
you need to be in front of people,
Or at least, yeah,
right?
be with
Or at least
people.
be
Like,
with
yeah,
people.
there's a lot of moving parts. It's not like, yeah, I could do it all on my own. As much as there's times when you want to do it all on your own. You need a subject, you need an actor, you need something to film. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, for me, man, when it hit, I'll be honest, yeah, the first few months, probably until May or June, I was like, um, doing like scavenging like just anything I can find, pieces of footage, like just trying to stay as creative as I could. But it wasn't doing anything for me. Like I still made content, but they were very like simple, like 15-second videos. I went on TikTok to see like what I could do with that. But I was suffering a lot, because again, that creative itch wasn't being scratched, and I wasn't able to go out. And I was devastated. I'll be honest, because I was really excited. I had all my contacts lined up, and I had a lot of projects that, were supposed to be even being filmed, around May or April. That was the
Yeah.
plan, the initial plan, like that short film I was discussing with you about. And I was worried. I didn't know if things were going to fall through. At the time, people forget, like when it first started, there wasn't like you wear a mask and that's it, you wash your hands. Like people didn't even know what to do for the first week or two until you started getting the announcements. And I didn't know what to make of it. I didn't know, you know, how many jobs were going to be lost, or what was going to happen to the economy. So just a lot of things that were running through my mind. And again, pursuing the arts is hard enough, it's challenging enough, and when you got to deal with these external factors, it doesn't really help. So I can only imagine, other fellow artists that are in that situation. But eventually, I kind of forced myself. And this is what I discuss with a lot of people in the industry, a lot of creatives that I have on this podcast. Is I always say, like, how did you keep busy? How did you keep creative? How do you stay creative? And I'm always curious, their techniques. And for me, I just went back to basics, something as simple as drawing. I discovered a passion for drawing, and I decided to draw characters that I grew up with, nostalgic characters, and I've been getting a lot of high praise, a lot of high compliments for it. And again, it's just another piece of a portfolio that I created for myself, and it occupied a lot of my time, but it also allowed me to not think about so much of the negativity at the time when I was like, oh, I'm all cooped up and there's nothing really to do. I enhanced my editing. I learned some more techniques, and played around with like VHS effects and music, investing in some music licenses. So it's all about, I guess, expanding and bettering the brand, and learning new skill sets, right? Something we always advocate, always endorse. And that's something that I did. I also decided to read more. I never, like, I always read in the past, not illiterate, but I never read as much as I wanted to, or as much as a writer should, right? I should mention that I also write my own content, and screenplays and things like that. So writing allowed me to, and it wasn't just narrative storytelling. It was self-help books. I got all into self-help, like The Power of Now and The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And you got The Happiness Advantage. And I discussed them on my vlogs because I want them to help people as much as they help me. I know that there's someone watching it that is struggling with, how do they find the inspiration, or how do they not compare themselves with other people and only compare with who they were yesterday, right? So I guess it just came down to, man, self-reflection. I used that time. How I coped with it is just looking inwards, and realizing, who's Daniel, who does he want to be, and what is his potential. And I in that brief period, or that long period to a lot of people where nothing was really happening, I took advantage of it, and I did as much as I could in terms of keeping my mind stimulated. Right, I finished a script that I was putting off for a year. I helped that short film, in the behind the scenes, like getting people on board, and it was just a long experience. And I know I seem like I'm kind of going off on a rant here, but
No.
it was just very interesting time, man. There was a lot going on, and I was in a low place, but I rose above it. And this is why I'm happy you mentioned at the beginning, like people think like they'll see my content, and I get compliments all the time, like you're doing great, can't wait to see more content, whatever. But people don't realize, like, I went through a really low time, trying to figure out, what I wanted my content to be about. What was I going to tell the world, talk about with, you know, what I wanted to discuss. But we survived. We overcome it, and we realized, there's no challenge we can overcome, and there's no obstacle we can't break through, right? And we prove that with ourselves. And I wanted to
Yeah.
know with yourself, like, did you have a moment after those 2 months kind of passed? Did you notice things were picking up for you?
Yeah. Before I get into that, I did definitely feel like this whole renovation has been drawn out, but I would not change a thing. I'll get into that in a sec, but I, it's interesting the way you described your experience during the pandemic, because I had a similar one where I feel like we're on the same boat, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship. I think
Right.
entrepreneurship gets a very glorified rap from
Hmm.
the industries today.
Yep.
But I do feel like it can be, even pre-pandemic, can be a very lonely endeavor
Yeah.
for a lot of people. Like I've been lucky to be part of some really great communities and groups of people who are very entrepreneurial and business oriented, and a lot of them starting their own things. And even pre-pandemic, it can be a very lonely endeavor when you're starting out. You don't have a team that you're working with every day. You're kind of on your own doing
Yeah.
your thing. Like I spent many days, just doing stuff at the house before the permit came through, demolishing a house by myself for 8 hours at a time, then going home, not being able to see friends. A
Yeah.
phone call can only do so much, right?
Yeah.
FaceTime can only do so much. And you know what? A lot of entrepreneurs that I've spoken to, even pre-pandemic, going through the same thing. Um, so,
Glad
yeah,
you mentioned
definitely.
pre-pandemic, though. That's something I forgot to mention, is that's I think what was devastating for me is pre-pandemic I was already trying to figure my stuff out. And I
Right.
think that's what it is I found some sort of salvation with this, production. And I was like, oh, I'm excited. Like things are gonna hopefully, like, not instantly happen, where you're making money and whatever. It's just more like you found something like you can grab onto or look forward to. And I
Yeah.
think with the pandemic, especially like I said, for entrepreneurs or people that are trying to make something for themselves, that's where it was a block in the road. It was just a huge obstacle that we
Yeah.
didn't know what to make of it initially.
Yeah.
Right?
I think the pandemic shone a light on people. They went internal, and they really reflected on who they were, the habits that they had as individuals, because people really became their habits during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And those that maybe went into a deep dark place, I'm sure a lot of people, including myself, have been there, realize, okay, why am I here? How can I get myself out? And then realize maybe it's their philosophies, maybe it's their habits, whatever. And they had to kind of rework or reinvent themselves to rise above it. I think there's a lot of good that came out of the pandemic, as bad as it was, in terms of a lot of people being able to reinvent themselves. But
I like
for
that. I like what
me,
you said, by the way. Reinvent. That's
yeah,
something I missed. Yeah.
yeah, no, definitely. I'm sure you went through a similar experience as I did. But anyways, after the demolition of the house,
Hmm.
initially, honestly, I wanted to finish the whole project by like September ish, because I wanted to kind of get 2 deals done in 2020, but
Nice.
that was with a general contractor that would do the work and manage the teams for me. But
Mhm.
on the other end of the demolition, I realized that we needed to trim the budget a bit more to fit the budget. So I ended up general contracting the whole project,
Okay.
which meant that I needed to service all the laborers, find them all, hire them all, manage them all day to day, basically deal with all the things that are required for a renovation. And
Right.
I'm not an expert. I've been doing this for a number of years, like my father has or my uncle has. He's a
Right.
great
Of
general
course.
contractor, so I had to learn everything from scratch.
Yeah.
And I'm finishing up this week. I have final occupancy inspection this week. It's
That's great.
February 9th today or 8th today. It's taken me longer for sure, but honestly, I wouldn't
Mhm.
change a thing. So after demolition, hired all the team members required for framing. Then I had to get the plumbing done. Then I had to get electrical, spray foam, drywall, painting, trim. Oh my gosh, floors. Like it was so many
Yeah.
things, right? And I think I bit off a lot more than I could chew in the beginning. But honestly, I came through it all, and I'm ready for absolutely anything on the back end of this. And another interesting thing that came out of the pandemic from a real estate standpoint was the real estate industry has been appreciating like absolutely crazy. So
Yeah, that's something I wanted to definitely ask you. Like, what's going on? I know I'm curious. Like, my industry got shot. The filmmaking industry, Hollywood's like on fire. But yeah, real estate. Everyone wants to know like what happened. Like, what? Why do you think it's on fire? Like, what's going on? On fire in a good way, I should mention.
yeah. Um, Yeah, at least on your end for the film industry, people have gotten creative. Like I've seen so many AAA actors on Netflix, for example,
Hmm.
or doing podcasts now, and all the like. It's just interesting to see how people have evolved from the big screens to, I guess you can call them the smaller screens, but
No,
this,
for sure. Yeah.
you know what I mean. But anyways, at least for the real estate industry side, it's been different based on the market you're in. For me, being in Hamilton, it was mostly positive. So there was a mass exodus of people moving out of Toronto. Nobody wants to live in condos anymore. They're
Oh
too.
yeah, is that like a trend you're finding?
Oh no, it's well known that people have been moving out of condos. The condo market in Toronto dropped. I don't know what percentage, but a
Wow.
significant double digits for sure, like 10+%.
Wow.
Yeah,
Is
the
that on
rents.
for our age though? Like, because I know people choose condos because that's the only thing they can afford. Like, you know what I mean? Like with, or at least they try to.
I mean, yeah, detached homes were already pricing young millennials out of the market, but
Hmm.
unfortunately, because the pandemic left people stuck at home, the mass, the great majority of people living in condos in Toronto were, I guess, saying to themselves, "I cannot live here anymore. It's too stuffy, too small. I want to move outside the city. I need more space." And so there's a mass exodus
Right.
um, from that market. Condo prices fell. Condo rents fell significantly as well.
Wow.
And interestingly enough, there was a large amount of people that moved into Hamilton because we're the
Oh.
next closest major city.
Oh, okay. Great.
So rental rates at the time when I was checking, I think it was August or September, rental rates went up 4% in Hamilton during the peak of the pandemic, and they dropped significantly in Toronto. Um, I wish I can explain why that was, other than the fact that we're the next closest city on a major highway or transit line. I don't know. Maybe
Hmm.
that's all it was. Maybe it was a bit more than that because there was affordability.
Are seeing
Um,
younger people like in Hamilton, like the activities
yes.
changing? Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
A lot of
great.
young, a lot of young creatives who would fit right in. Hamilton's known
Yeah.
very well for their arts and culture.
Nice.
That's a big industry for them. Um, but yeah, so the rents went up, and the market itself, the detached market, for the past, I don't even know how many months at this point, has been just on a bull run like crazy. The appreciation last year for the housing market, I think across Canada in general, was something stupid like 20% or close to that. And the average that people see year to year is 5%. So we had a 400% higher appreciation rate in Canada for a number of reasons. Also because the government printed a ton of money, stimulus
Mm-hmm.
money, right?
Right.
And that's a whole other conversation, or a can of worms that we don't have to get into
Right.
right now.
Yeah.
But printing money increases asset prices, and so I fortunately benefited from the pandemic from a financial standpoint, because I'm definitely going to get higher rents from people when I start marketing for rents in the coming
Nice.
weeks. And the appraisal value of this home when I'm finished and I get the appraiser to walk through could be significantly higher than what I initially budgeted last February. So from that standpoint, I'm super grateful
That's
the
great.
market went the way it is. But
Mm-hmm.
you know what? There's also downsides. Like obviously, at least from a landlord perspective,
Mm-hmm.
you can't evict people right now during a pandemic.
Right.
It's illegal. They've stopped that,
Wow.
which I can understand.
Yeah.
But it also places a really large risk on small landlords,
Yeah.
because there are professional tenants out there, which are folks that do try to take advantage of
Know how to
landlords
milk the system. Yeah.
know to milk the system. And I don't want to create any animosity with renters. Obviously, I think there is definitely a really supportive relationship that needs to be built between landlords and tenants. I think that there's positives and negatives on both ends of the
Mm-hmm.
spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will tell you that the tenants have the majority of the control and weight on the lease, and not the lease, the laws that Canada has or Ontario has specifically.
Right.
A lot of people will say no, it's the landlords, they have all the power. I don't really want to get into that discussion. All I want to say is, I understand the challenges that the pandemic has caused.
Mm-hmm.
The government, I don't know if they have the best systems in place to deal with it, but as a small landlord, you just have to be careful who you're finding. Make sure they're reliable tenants, and I should be okay in that sense.
Yeah,
What
for
finance?
sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not too familiar with that field. My sister's on so she residence, and she has she tells me what it's like to when the pandemic started. She people were lowballing what she needed them to rent out. You know what I mean? Like her place that she has.
Hmm. Hmm.
And now they're still trying to get away with it, but it's because things are better, and as you said, proven with the market, it's you're not going to get away with it. You know what I mean? Like before it was you could ask for 200, which is a steal. But now it's just you can't ask for that much. You know what I mean? You can't ask for especially because again, how just seeing how the market's moving, but giving an insight towards condos. And I had no idea. It makes sense to me. I think a big thing too is, would you say it's a safety reason? Like people didn't like the idea they were cornered up like rats in a building. Think about that. What if one
That's a
guy
good
in the
point.
building has the virus? I remember that's something my dad mentioned, and I was like, wow, that's a pretty good point. Who would want to live in a condo when there's a pandemic, right? Not only you got to worry about yourself, you got to worry about everyone else. So yeah, that's a very interesting take. So is the rent? So why the rents in Toronto still high? No, because people are still joking around about it, and I
I
still
mean,
see influencers talking smack.
honestly, yeah, Daniel, in general, the Toronto markets, run away from a lot of people in terms of affordability.
Yeah.
Um, the cost of living there is incredibly high. It's just the way the market has gone. I mean, there's limited supply in the market in terms of units, and there's a ton of money printing from the government, and there's so many macroeconomic reasons why the housing market has run away from us that I honestly probably can't explain much very articulately here. But
Right.
unfortunately, there's something called the K-shaped recovery,
Hmm.
which we've seen as extremely prominent in the pandemic, which is the richer have gotten richer and the
Yeah.
poor have gotten poorer.
Wow.
Um, and it's unfortunately the way that the world has been going, and for a very long time.
Yeah. The last 100 years.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. For the last hundred years at least. So yeah, definitely people with assets, physical assets, and people in the stock market as well have done really well for themselves. And then people without those things, unfortunately, they didn't do well for themselves. And this just goes to show how little value is in our fiat currency, which is like our Canadian dollar, for example. The more
Of
money
course.
we print, it's a deflationary currency. I don't want to turn this into an economics podcast,
No,
but
no, for sure. But
the
I know
more,
I love always like hearing about this because you know more about it. But um, yeah, continue with that. What were you saying? So it's like you're
yeah,
devaluing the money because we're
right,
printing more. Yeah, because I already seen
exactly.
the dollar. The dollar's losing a lot of value, like from when I last checked. Right.
Oh yeah,
It also doesn't help because we're like the economy is not working at full force. Right.
the way I look at it, the Canadian economy for quite a long time at this point
Right.
has kind of been like a crack addict. That's the
Okay.
way I look at the
Yeah. Yeah.
Canadian.
Well, please
And the reason
explain.
I the
Yeah.
reason I say that is we have so much debt. I don't know where we rank in the world in terms of. I think we're in the top five for sure in
Oh, okay.
terms of the amount of debt our
We owe.
country has.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the U.S. for example, they crashed in '08, which
Yeah.
was healthy. That was healthy for them because they had so much debt. There's so much,
Yeah. Money in
you
the
know,
wrong places, and
money.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that whole thing, but basically they corrected, right?
Hmm.
But Canada, they did not correct. They stayed flat, and the reason that is because the Canadian Housing Mortgage and Housing Corporation, which is the entity that insures the banks and the
Hmm.
mortgages the banks have. Basically, the banks obviously they needed a bailout. They were having a hard time in '08 too. But
Yeah.
CMHC, they bailed them out. They paid all the banks off. They
Right.
printed all the money. They paid all the banks off. So there was no significant crash like the U.S.
Yeah.
And that just increased our debt load even more.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing it in interest rates. The interest rate they keep cutting the interest rates. Now they're almost zero. It's like 0.5%
Is
prime
this
rate,
why we
which is
live in a?
crazy.
Is this why like suburban homes, for instance, where they clearly do not look anywhere close to $1 million or worth $1 million? Is that?
That's exactly it. I mean, that
Yeah.
that goes to show that asset prices keep increasing because that's stimulation for the Canadian economy to
Right.
continue,
Right.
and that's just a byproduct of it. It's with interest rates and printing money as being the two prime ways that the Canadian government is keeping the economy afloat. So, anyways, I think there's going to be a very big crash at some point in the future because we keep pushing it off. And the crack addict notion comes in when they keep cutting interest rates and printing money. It's like a
Hmm.
short-term fix. They need their fix
Yeah.
to not crash, so they don't have their
But
withdrawal.
eventually, it's just going to all catch up. And
Eventually,
that's
it's
why I
just going
wanted
to
to
all catch
ask
up.
you. And that's why I wanted to ask you because you have more knowledge of this with the economy and just economics as in general. What like I'm always like I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm always like running around saying like guys like the dust hasn't settled. Like once the vaccines come, like it doesn't mean anything. Like there's a lot of repercussions on how between CERB and all the money that we're look at the I feel like the taxes like how much we're going to get taxed because we have to pay off all that money that was lent to us. What do you feel like? Do you feel like the dust settled, or like we're not even close to seeing what could happen?
It's hard to say.
Well, you just said there
And
was a crash as a crack addict. Are you referring to that?
no,
No, I'm just saying like is
no,
that
it's a
some
good point.
similar?
Good observation.
Hmm.
Definitely. I believe that if the government did not intervene with the stimulus money, printing money, the economy would have definitely had its crash. But they intervened. They dropped
Mm.
interest rates ridiculously low to stimulate people buying houses and getting mortgages. And this is how the Canadian economy continues to
Right.
fuel itself. So that's definitely one of the prime examples of this like crack addict mentality. That's the only way they could keep the economy afloat at this point. There's not really another way that they are willing to exercise. The other and probably more healthy decision is to let it crash. Probably going to have a very long and very sad depression for a couple of
Right.
years at the time the economy breaks. But who knows when that happens, because they're just going to keep printing and they're going to keep dropping interest rates. It's going to be negative interest rate environment eventually. And that's why if you have cash, cash is trash. People keep saying cash is king. Cash is not king. It's trash.
Oh yeah.
You need to put it in assets. It's
Right.
the only thing that's going to keep your money valuable. If you have money in your checking account, it's losing so much money every single day. It's
Hmm.
insane. The government, um, they reworked their inflationary targets for the next number of years, and it's incredibly higher,
Wow.
like way higher than initially anticipated. They say we're trying to keep like I think a 2% interest or 2% inflation rate averaged over the next 10 years. I may be wrong, but it's really not that, because they were lower than that in the previous years. So they're actually going to run inflation super hot. It's going to be like probably 5+% every year. So you're going to be losing 5 or more% of your money that's in cash every year if
It's
it's not
crazy.
into assets that make you money. So I digress. I'm done with
No,
my rant, but
no, yeah, that's a great that I want to learn so much more, and I have so much more to learn in terms of like investing, and I took kind of an interest in investing your money in compound interest, just making more for your buck, right? What
yeah,
would you advise like assets like other than housing? Like, is there when you refer to assets, like what are you referring to, like to help people invest money?
yeah. I just mean everybody has to do their own research to see what's right for them, but
Right.
investments can be as simple as an RSP or a GIC, which honestly I probably wouldn't recommend. I would probably put it in the stock market. I'd probably put it in real estate. I'd put it in, even Bitcoin. That's an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah.
Anything that's not uh, deflation or inflationary, you
Hmm.
want to go into deflationary assets. So Bitcoin, for example, is a deflationary currency because it has a set number of Bitcoins. There's only, I think, 22 million Bitcoins in the world.
Hmm.
There's no more. They've set that number to 22 million,
Wow.
and people are mining Bitcoin every day, right? We haven't like mined 22 million. I think it's 22 million. But once they hit that cap, sorry, we're not making any more Bitcoin. That means that at that point, the more interest there is in demand for Bitcoin, every Bitcoin is going to be worth more because you can't
Wow.
make more, just like the
Yeah.
government makes more Canadian dollars. So think of it from that perspective. Anything as a deflationary currency, anything that um, uh, appreciates over time, like physical assets are always fantastic. Stock market, as bad as it was in March, it had a fantastic year. I don't know what the average return was last year in the S&P 500. I had the best financial year of my life last year because of the stock market. So I just, I
Oh, that's right.
reiterate to
Yeah.
everybody,
You're into stocks. Yeah, you invest money into stocks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Touch
Anyways,
on touching on the
I
stock
digress.
market. Yeah, yeah. Touching on the stock market. Yeah. With just want to ask about this whole like GameStop thing. Like, are you a fan of what happened, or like, or is that could that be bad for
That's a
future
good question.
investors? Yeah.
It's a good question. I've been listening to a lot of really smart people talk about this, and I my take on it is this goes to show how disenchanted the everyday investor has become regarding that K-shaped recovery that I mentioned earlier,
Mm.
because the hedge funds and all the wealthy conglomerates, they just kept getting richer throughout this whole pandemic, and the little guys just kept getting pounded and pounded and
Yeah.
pounded.
Hmm.
And I think what happened was finally the little guy had a chance to stick it to the man,
Yeah.
right? So they had an opportunity to um, communicate in large numbers on Reddit, come up with a plan, go after hedge funds who had large short positions in companies like GameStop.
Right.
In shorting, people have different philosophies on shorting. Some people say that's just the way the market is. That's just one other opportunity. But a lot of people think shorting is kind of um, what's the right word I'm looking for? I don't know, like kind of picking on the companies and betting on them to fail.
Yeah.
So
Like
hedge funds are
conspiring.
making
They're conspiring
conspire
against them. Yeah.
right, exactly. They're
Yeah.
conspiring against companies. And because of this large short position, as the stock goes up, these shorts lose lots of money. And so they flooded GameStop and raised it up enough to have these hedge funds close out their short positions, which means they had to buy huge amounts of GameStop. So it wasn't the little
Wow.
guy that made it shoot to 400.
Yeah.
The hedge funds losing so much money and having to buy GameStop. And the reason they were able to do that is, I think, this is just an opinion, but it's all the stimulus money. People finally have money now. They're at home. They're like,
Yeah.
screw it. I'm going to put my money in the stock market. I'm going to screw over the hedge funds who made all this money during the pandemic. I didn't do well for myself, but here's an
We
opportunity
coordinated
for me to do
together.
so.
Yeah, for
Exactly.
sure. And
They're all,
they genuinely wanted GameStop to exist, right? A lot of
of
them, let's be
course.
honest, that's brand loyalty. And we can talk about that too, especially on future podcasts, the importance of brand. Something I'm a huge advocate of is, if you don't have a brand when you're in a business, or something that people can connect, an image with what you're selling,
Yeah.
there's no grounds for you, right? There's no traction.
I
You
have a
need,
question.
what's up?
I have a question for you.
Sure.
What would be your top 3 tips for people on building a brand? Because I think you have a really interesting perspective on it.
Thanks, man.
And yeah, just share it with me and with
Yeah,
everybody. I'm curious.
it's the first time I'm asked this actually, so I'm gonna give it my best shot here. But the 3 tips that I'd recommend. Um, First is be authentic, have good intentions. So whatever it is you're selling, whatever it is you're trying to endorse, um, be passionate about it. Um, be authentic about it. When I say that, what I'm trying to get at is I hate those ads that are targeted to me. I don't know why, but it's always
Yeah.
like make money in 6 months. I'll tell you how. Do you want to live like this? Whatever. It's so cringe, and it just doesn't make me want to invest any money at all. I don't care how desperate I am. It bothers me that someone's yelling at me to do something or trying to make me feel worse about myself. So having good intentions, having authenticity, having the goal of you want to improve, and again, I always use the term inspire someone's life to be better. This is why I'm into filmmaking, why I'm into storytelling. My brand, I started 94 Productions, is the whole intention is when you see the content, like when I made the content for you, I got that phone call like, buddy, I have no words. That's what I live for. That's what the brand is to sell. It goes to another level. I don't need a walkthrough video. I need something that it's like it's going to make me think like, what I just watch. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Transcends
Change
that.
perspectives.
Change
Yeah.
perspective, because I get a lot of, so for example, your industry, right? I get people contacting me like for real estate, and they say, I want something different. I don't like these videos. And they show me examples. And while they're all like talented in their own right, there's great production companies doing their own thing. I think why people kind of are drawn to what I do is I treat it like I'm making like a movie. I take it from a personal place. The music, the score, the way, the shots are conducted, how I position you in the camera, how I make you smile at certain shots. It's because I'm trying to make it personal for you. You know what I mean? I'm trying to make it inviting for the viewer. Like, this is what my house is about. And it's not supposed to be very dry. Like, okay, there's the kitchen, this is whatever. That's why in your video, I should mention, I added those little things in where you were like, I don't like that stove. It's crap. We're going to throw it out. And then I did the fuzzy, because it's like, it adds that humanity, right? And you were so honest when you said it that I'm like, I have to keep it. Like, it's you,
Yeah.
that's your character. And I
Yeah.
loved it. I was laughing when I was editing. I'm like, I have to put this in. This is great. Second tip, I should mention, is what I was touching on before, is passionate. And when I say passion, I mean have it tell a story. Um, have it like your brand must be associated. What I'm saying is, when I watch Tarantino, for example, like Tarantino's brand, his name, for instance, I connect it to the rebel, the guy that he doesn't have the film school. He's not he had no direction on where he was going in his life, but he had one thing, and that was passion for movies. So when I
Yeah.
watch his movies, when I see his stories, and I see the characters that he creates, and I you know see how everything unfolds, I always connect it back to, this is the guy with the vision, this is the guy with the imagination, right? The rebel that does it his own way. For example, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, there's a scene where, we live in cancel culture and feminists and things like that. And not that I'm advocating violence against women, but it was very interesting to see um, a young woman getting mauled by a dog, right? And it was just unedited, and it was raw. Like, it was on the scene for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that movie, right? And a lot of people in the film community uh, had high praise for that, because again, it connects back to his brand. Like, he's not going to give you anything less, right? So I think it should have a good story and connected with that passion. And the third tip for creating a great brand is, I would say, I always say this term like legacy. I always throw around this term like leave behind a legacy. And what I mean by that is whenever I do something, I'm always thinking long term. I'm never thinking like this is going to help me like in 2 months. This is going to help me for a lifetime. And this connects back to have a badass logo. And people might say, well, isn't that easy or isn't that stupid? Whatever judgment you make, I find it incredibly important. That logo is your identity in the business. It's the first thing people see, and it's what people connect to. And it's not also the idea where you can just put it on anything and make it easily marketable. It's the idea that it connects to something, like what I'm looking at. Like that hat like if you're watching this YouTube video, guys, I'm staring at this logo on your head, that hat you're wearing. I immediately love it. Like I love the design. So curious how that came about. But I see it and I immediately connect with, your brand and what it's trying to sell. You know what I mean? The legacy, what it's trying to leave, like with this whole, there seems to be this, I don't know. I just see that brand, that logo, and I'm imagining like prestige and like luxury and, professionalism. You know what I mean? Like you connect it to. So I think it's really important to have a solid visual aspect that will leave a legacy, leave something with the viewer, right? Like an impact. So those are my 3 tips. I'll articulate it more as I get better with this, but that's basically how I see why I study marketing for the most part, and why I pursued this kind of creative venture, this business, because those are what I live by. The idea that when people see my content, when people collaborate with me, they're getting this passion for storytelling. That's what I wanted to mention is, as a videographer, clients that I deal with, like I got a call the other day, and this woman was telling me like, I want you for a shoot because I could tell that you're in it for the story. You're not in it for the shots. You know what I mean? Like just get the shots and go home. You want to actually like tell the best story you can with that camera. And I think that connects always to a place that you should connect to with yourself, is who you really are and who you want the world to see you as. And that's my take.
Amazing. Very concise. I like it. I agree with your points. I would add as well, I think it's especially, I think it's a little difficult, at least in your industry, because you're always behind the camera. But I think
Yeah.
having the personality of yours come through your brand, which you're doing through your podcasts and the other content you're producing, I think that's so important as well. Like people want to connect with people before they invest in businesses. People do business with people. People don't do business with businesses, right?
Yeah.
And I've had some really great mentors in the past, and I'm currently working with an amazing real estate coach who's reiterated that to me, that people before they. It's interesting, I should say. A lot of followers, they typically are very silent for a very long time. They'll
Yeah.
watch your content, they'll consume it, they'll get value from it, they'll connect with you as an individual, they'll start to trust you, and what your knowledge and your content, you've won some awards in your video, in your
Yeah.
short films.
Recently. Yeah.
Like
Thank you.
you've done some great work, and I'm sure
Hmm.
you have a lot of people that have been very intensely watching your stuff, but maybe haven't reached out to you yet. But there comes a point when you post something that's authentic enough, to your point, like that's the first point of building a brand, that involves you as a person.
Hmm.
That's going to be the straw that broke the camel's back, or that's going to be the tipping point for them to reach out to you and say, you know what, look, I really appreciate all that you've done, all the content, all the value. I think value is an overused word, but I'm just using it
But it's
arbitrarily.
true, man. That's the first thing we learn in marketing. What I just want to
Yeah,
touch on like the whole thing about value, and an example with, sorry, I just have to say this with
yeah,
identity.
yeah.
You know, there was a point where I just wanted to be behind the camera. I just wanted to make my films and whatever. But I also said to myself, I'm pretty presentable in that I have a personality, and I'm very outgoing, and I feel like I have a lot of points that I can help. Because when I talk to friends or family, they'll tell me like, "Yo, you should like talk to people about this. Like you're really articulate, or you have a really good message to say. Um, because I get a lot where like I come across very genuine, right, when I talk. And I said, you know what? I was watching some videos during the pandemic and about self-reflection and like how to become a better person. And I said, I could do this. Like I could talk to my audience. I could talk to people that are struggling. Like it doesn't always have to be about film, right? And then they connect it back to the brand of like when you watch my movies or when you watch my content that I create, you see why I created that character that was struggling to be a filmmaker, or why that character felt like he never fit in, or why that
Yeah.
character, was judged by, everyone around him for pursuing something that was different. It always
Yeah.
it's like meta, right? Like you connect it back to like, oh my god, this is what he was talking about when he was doing his vlogs. You know what I mean? Like that's what I mean by like the power of having a solid brand. It becomes bigger than what you are. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I
um
agree. It's
so yeah,
interesting because
go
yeah,
ahead, go ahead, man.
it's interesting because I think that's the best way to create like super fans is
Hmm.
to have those people connect behind the screen as well as on the screen. Like
Hmm.
if I'm thinking of, I'm assuming Tarantino's like a mentor of yours,
Yeah,
right?
for
Or
sure.
somebody you're trying to emulate. He has a very eccentric personality, right?
Yeah.
If you watch him, but he's such an interesting guy and very, he's an outlier in terms of his
Yeah.
personality, but that's what makes him very likable. And, if I'm thinking of, filmmakers that I've found very interesting or that I kind of follow, like Taika Waititi,
Yeah, he's
such an
another one. Yeah.
eccentric, outgoing, very funny guy who's very creative. Made some. I love Marvel movies. He's made
Yeah.
some. The Thor movie, for
Ragnarok,
example,
bro.
Ragnarok. I thought that was a fantastic
Yeah,
film.
and
I
he's
really
making Thor
enjoyed it.
4, so let's go.
Yeah, Love and Thunder.
Yeah.
That's going to be good too. But
Yeah.
I think that's a great example of creating super fans. Right?
Hmm.
Is being able to connect behind and in front of the screen with the real humans that make the work. So yeah,
And they're coming from a different time as well, right? Like they didn't have the opportunity, or maybe the outlet to do vlogs and stuff. What I'm trying to get at is my generation, our generation, the millennials, people that want to get into film. I feel like they need to uh, take a shot at everything. They can't just make films and post them, because I was realizing it's very limited, and I want to get more of. I could get more of myself out there. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Before it was, you didn't have YouTube, they didn't have podcasts. It was, you make a movie, and if they like you, they do a Q&A, or they do a panel, and then they post it on a website or whatever, right?
yeah.
But now we can meet them halfway. We can talk to our audience even before, talk to them what's on our mind or what we're going through, and it's a different dynamic. And this is what I encourage with you too, right? I'm not saying do videos on self-help and meditate, but I would definitely recommend, you know, um, how you were explaining, like, the importance of investing in stocks, or the importance of, having assets, or what you just gave that whole spiel about the economy and how it might crash. Like, listening to that, I feel more comfortable hearing your advice. I feel more comfortable doing business with you, right? Um, it changes the relationship. It changes the relationship from the viewer and the consumer, to, like you said, a super fan, to a loyal audience member. That's someone that's invested in your storytelling, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
somebody that advocates for you. Like
advocates for you.
you're a Tarantino super fan. You
Yeah,
talk about him all the time, right? You
yeah,
promote
to
him,
everyone.
right? You're a
Anybody
perfect
has no idea
example.
who I am, but he is like, I talk him on, like, and people still, like, I'll run into filmmakers too, where they'll be like, why do you like him so much? Like, he's so left field, he's so much. They don't understand. Like, I get it. He could be an asshole for all I know, right? Not that I'm saying he is,
Of
but
course.
I could walk. They say never meet your heroes. I could, run into him, and he probably could never look twice. However, I just love uh, that whole journey, like what he went through, and it gives me hope. It gives me this inspiration that it's like, I don't need to be a kid in film school. I don't need to, like, know all these people with a lot of money. I just need to be
Yeah,
a guy that's so passionate that people
yeah,
are drawn to me and people want to work with me. And that's what's happened. I've been so
yeah,
fortunate in the last year that I've been able to work with talented, great people that want to see my stories come to life, want me to help them make their stories come to life.
mhm.
And whether it's narrative, whether it's real estate, whether it's a promo, whether it's a tattoo video, like, it's just so uplifting to know that my brand is being shared with them, and that's what I mean by good intentions, the passion, and the legacy.
I think that was really well put. I agree. I think that as long as as people continue sharing their story, the struggles, the wins, the losses, you're gonna find those people that resonate with you, right? Like you're
Yeah.
resonating with Tarantino because of his story and all the struggles he went through, and you drew maybe some similarities in your own life, where you appreciate
Very
how he's
much.
overcome certain things,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, it's just about having at least an interesting story on my end, really briefly.
Yeah,
um,
sure.
like just continually just sharing your truth, living your passion,
Hmm.
without um, without expecting anything in return, is honestly the best way to live. And I've had so many moments in my life, and I hope I could reach at least one person listening to this,
Right.
because I've had some extremely profound moments in my life in the last year and a half that I would have never expected to happen, because of the work and the dedication and the passion that I've had for over a decade. So, for example, I've been a missionary for a large portion
Yeah.
of my life. It's something really important to me,
Hmm.
something I'm tying into new mission investments. Um, I want to work with people that want to make more than generational wealth. I want people to work with that understand the importance of social impact and giving back to those in need. And I think a lot of people think those two things are opposite, but really they go hand in hand. And when I started doing missionary work 10 years ago, I just honestly really enjoyed it. It was really profound moments, going there, building homes, and donating them. I look forward to it whenever I go. Obviously, I had no intention other than helping, um, but it's interesting to see how the universe um, comes and gifts you things when you have a lot of
Least
dedication,
expected too.
when you least
Yeah.
expect it. And like, for example, I won't name any names or whatever, but you know, um, I wrote some blog posts
Nice.
maybe 2 years ago on just a couple, not even that many, just a handful of blog posts on my work in the Dominican, my experience there.
Never sent me the
Mentioned some.
link.
This is before
So
our
so yeah, I know. I'm just teasing.
this is before our interesting conversations at the
Right,
gym,
right,
but anyways, this was still when I was working in corporate sales and not
right. That's
really
right. That's right.
enjoying it. But a week ago, literally last week, I received a phone call from the founder of the philanthropy organization I've been helping with for over a decade.
Wow, that's
I
amazing.
met him in passing like 10 years ago. This
Right.
guy has started some extremely successful businesses in his lifetime. He retired at an early age and he ended up building this foundation. He called me because he was searching. Well, it was his son who was with the father. He was searching up stuff on his dad. My blog post came up because I mentioned his dad's name and his company, because that's who started it. He calls me. He says, I want you to speak to my dad, and I want you to meet my dad. And it was just a random call at like 8 p.m. at night. I had spoken to his son last year or the year before because he's a board member of this organization. So that's how he knew me,
Right.
very like high level. But he called me. He's like, I want you to meet my dad. And I had the opportunity to speak to this man who had such an influence on my life, who I'd only known from a distance. And that was all from a couple blog posts that I had just shared my story
Yeah, and you
a few
never know
years
who.
back.
And I wanted to mention, you never know who's watching. And I'm glad you mentioned this part because, I post my videos, I post my podcast, and it's so flattering to thank you for like, it's been connecting with you, and you gave me high praise at the beginning of the podcast about the importance of what I'm doing. But I have my moments because I'm human, where I say, wow, like it's only got 4 views, or like only got 2 plays, and you don't realize that you never know who's watching. I learned this the hard way, where it was like on Instagram, like this stupid thing about likes and comments. There are so many
Mhm.
people that reach out and compliment my work that never don't like my stuff, don't comment on it, but they're watching it, they're viewing it. Like someone's always watching, and you never know who it is. So
Yep.
to anyone that's discouraged, anyone that doesn't feel like you need to put stuff out, because I'm telling you, like someone that connected to me last was saying, by the way, like I was watching a lot of your corner talks, your vlogs, and they're really well done. And I was hoping if you could do this for me. And I'm like, if I didn't do these vlogs, who knows if they would have been interested? You know what I mean? Like it always put stuff out, always. And this is what I mean by like being genuine: is don't put stuff out for no reason. Find something that you really want to do and just put it out there. And if you have good intentions, your audience will find you, your clients will find you.
Hmm.
So I'm really glad you said that, man. Adrian, it's been a pleasure. I had a lot of fun doing this. We're going to do a lot more of these, share our voices, share our you know experiences on this entrepreneurial journey. You have anything to say, man, before we leave?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, man. I always really enjoyed our conversations because I feel like we're on the same wavelength,
Very
right?
similar. Yeah, very same, bro.
The visions we have of our future, the progress we're trying to make in our lives, the authenticity we're trying to put out there. Yeah, I feel like we really do have a lot of similarities, and it's interesting. Can't really have this conversation with everybody these days, right? Not
No.
everybody is on the same wavelength, and I hope that somebody watches this today and at least gets a couple of good nuggets out of this, which I'm sure
Yeah.
they will. And yeah, I look forward to doing more with you. Thanks for having me.
No, of course, buddy. And thanks again for everyone listening. And we hope we made your day that much better. All right. Take care, and we'll talk soon.
Take care.